Good evening and welcome to My Future. I'm Ruveneko, and this evening we continue in our series about media. Tonight we are embarking on the subject that many of us know, we hear about, and we don't often get to grips with it because maybe we think it's a bit taboo, but the role of women in media is something that women like myself take very passionately because we are in the industry and there's still many challenges that we face on a day-to-day that we are hoping one day we'll overcome. So I've got two women in studio with me tonight who are faces and voices that you know, and also I guess when some of them put pen to paper, you can also recognize from how they write. I have in studio with me tonight Tariro Makanga. Tariro is also, Tariro, basically her history in media is in broadcast, started on ZBC years ago, around 2000, right? Mm-hmm. And she is here in studio with us tonight, so thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much, Ruveneko.
And then we also have Beatrice Tonodzai. Beatrice is two-pronged when it comes to media, both in print and in broadcast. And she's in studio with us tonight as well. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ruveneko.
All right, so ladies, I know that both of you share a lot in common, but I'll put myself in here as well so that we can all talk about our role as women in the media. I know that the various subjects that both of you cover are similar, that of HIV and AIDS, women and children. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But the first question I'd like to ask is, when you hear the question, what is the role of women in media? What comes to mind?
Thank you very much, Ruveneko. Actually, for me, that question, I actually don't even want to hear about it, to say what is the role of a woman in the media. If you're talking about what is the role of a journalist, a reporter, a producer in the media, this is the conversation that we should now be having. Because looking at the role of women in the media, we've been talking about this ages. I started working in media early 2000, and we've been talking about these issues. So for now, I think where we need to be going is our participation in the media. Are we getting that same role with our male counterparts? How are the opportunities? Because the role that we have when it comes to the media is to tell a story. Put any issue, be it political, economic, social, the HIV that you were talking about, onto the media agenda. So we are there the same way that any male colleague is playing in the media. That's the same role that we are there for.
I like that. That's a very progressive way of thinking because we fighting for so many equalities. And I guess what you're saying in essence is that this shouldn't be a topic anymore, to say a woman in media. Yes. But one thing we do know is that, factually, there are more than, 100 countries in the world, and hundreds of countries in the world. And that there was a research that was done through these 100 countries that 46% of news stories in print and radio and television uphold gender stereotypes. So in as much as we might want to run away from it, it's not something that's completely gone. And 6% of these stories highlight gender equality, and then men still occupy 73% of top media management positions globally. So we say, let's not make it a thing that, discussing women in media, but this is a reality. And maybe I'll come to you, Beatrice. What's your thought on the same question?
Okay, the temptation would be to start where Tariro started, because I think the fact that we're still having conversations about what the role of women is in media shows that there's a problem, because we shouldn't be talking about the role of a woman, the role of a man in media. It should be the role of media in a society. Because for me, if you are a media practitioner, which we all are today in this room, which is very exciting, I think what drives us is the same issues, really. We're people that want to speak for the voiceless. We're people that want to challenge the status quo. We want to lobby the policymakers. That's the role of the media. It doesn't then matter to me whether somebody's wearing pants or they're wearing a skirt. But as you say, that your statistics have shown, and if you look at the newsrooms the way they are, I started my career in a newsroom, a print newsroom, and I would like to say that it is a fact that it takes quite a longer time for a woman to make it to an editorship, for example. Women are relegated to being assigned stories. And when it comes to even being assigned stories, who is in charge of the beats that are considered to really make a difference, the political beat, the business beat? It's mostly males. So you find that because we're having these conversations over time, there are people who are really making an effort to try and change the status quo. But otherwise, the stereotypes are there. Women will be relegated to what are called the softer stories in the newsroom. That's a reality. I've headed a newsroom before myself, and I was very happy that when I had the chance to head a news and a current affairs team, my team was largely female. But when I was a reporter myself, the setup was completely different. It's as you say. Right now, if we look at the media landscape in Zimbabwe, how many females have really risen to become bosses, you know, to have the chance to make the policies, to make the decisions. So women continue to be runners. And as long as they are runners, somebody's going to tell them that you run with maternal health, you run with the HIV story. Stories that I'm still convinced today, as far as I'm concerned, they are not softer stories. I actually think women bring more quality, more substance to those debates.
Okay,
so
I'm going to stop you there because I want us to get into that in more detail. But I want to touch on something you did say about how stories are assigned in a newsroom. The softer stories assigned to women. Is that necessarily a negative thing, or is it also a form of protection? Because of how some of these stories need to be covered in certain areas. You know, you can imagine sending some women maybe to areas that, you know, when journalists travel outside of their home city, for example. One thing that I do know is a big problem for journalists is a budget, where the way they travel and transport, where they then stay, when it comes to accommodation, sometimes they have to share rooms, and it's inappropriate to get them to share a room with a male. So looking at all those things and the conditions, the working conditions that women might have to undergo, surely it's a form of protection.
Protection for who, by who? If somebody is a journalist, that's why I'm saying, for me, some of these careers are a calling. A real journalist, and I've spoken to some male editors who have been very instrumental in my growth as a media practitioner. It's not always that the males stand in our way. They're actually males that will aid you in your path. So what I have done as a media woman over the years is to look at the allies, and I will use the allies. I've got no problems with using the allies. I call them midwives, whether they're male or female. So I think it's really about strategy. Who tells you that they're protecting you? From what? Because a journalist, for me, it's a calling. It's somebody who is always asking questions. It's somebody who's curious. They're not going to stop. Whether they're female or they're male, this has got something to do with God, really. It's something that's divine. We can't choose what sex we're going to be. But if it's in you that you want to ask these questions, people should not tell me that, you know what, the budget is not enough. So what? We've covered elections, we've gone on campaign trails, we have slept at the back of those growth point shops. I have been in a newsroom, I have walked the path of being a reporter. All you need is an editor who believes that Beatrice will go out there and bring the story. Over time, of course, you need to have an honest conversation with yourself to say, where are my strengths? Where are my interests?
Beatrice, I hear what you're saying, and it sounds very, you know, almost admirable that you're that passionate, you know, and I'll come to you here, Tari, where, you know, Beatrice is touching on the fact that being a journalist is a calling, and it's something that you have to be able to undergo those harsh conditions. But let's bring in the reality where culture and society plays a role. You are somebody's wife. You now are going on a campaign trail. It's 2018, right? You're now going on a campaign trail to cover elections across the country. And you're now alluding to the fact that you're going to sleep at the back of a Shabin or at the back of a truck with other male journalists from Growth Point. Is your husband going to be okay with that?
He has to be okay with that. You know, when you started saying culture, Ruvenoko, I remember when I wanted to be a journalist, my mother used to be against it. Especially I was saying I want to be a broadcaster. And you know what she would do? She would tell me a list of so and so, so and so, so and so. They are not married. That was, that's a stereotype that was already there. Abaroreke, you know. And for her, she wanted mkwasha. So she didn't want me to be a journalist. But because I wanted to be a journalist, I had to make sure I become a journalist and not a lawyer that she wanted me to be. If we are going to still continue saying culture dictates this, why can't I go and sleep by the bar or wherever this male counterpart is sleeping? We need to run away from all those stereotypes. Yes, work is work.
But this I'm not even putting the problem on us. As women, we are progressive. The three of us sitting here, we have no problem doing that. But
they need to understand. Yes.
Or you then see a lot of female media practitioners. Actually, if you look at the trend,
at a certain point, they all leave the newsrooms. They're going to public relations. They're going to marketing. They're going to safer zones.
They're going
and
to
I want to agree with Ruveneko. Yes, I want to agree with Ruveneko. She has a point. The reason why most of them do that is because, again, our society puts a certain pressure upon us at a certain age. So when they come in, they've got all the zeal. They want to know. They want to, you know, discover what. Yes, now they want to get married as well. So because you want to have it all, and then they start going out of the newsrooms. And some of them, those who are really called to be journalists, I believe they're very miserable. Because if that's what they really wanted to do, so that's a conversation we should be having about choices. I no longer have the passion to run after people with a mic now. I want to run the business.
Even the way you dress, how are you going to be doing? How are you going to go stand at a podium with your microphone? You're listening to My Future Tonight, and I'm in studio with Tariro Makanga and Beatrice Tonodzai, and we're discussing the role of women in media as women in media. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to My Future. I'm Ruveneko, and in studio tonight we have Beatrice Tonodzai and Tariro Makanga, and we're discussing the role of women in media. We were looking at the obvious side of it, you know, from speaking from a very personal perspective as women in media ourselves, just underlying what we find are some of our day-to-day challenges. And now we're going to continue to unpack this and look at some of the greater challenges that we face, that most women, not even just in media, but in any corporate setting, really face. But one thing that I know for a fact is that there is the element of being a woman, being objectified, whether you are behind the camera, in front of the camera, writing at the news desk, whatever the case might be. Ladies, let me into your world. We all have different worlds, you know, where we work, and I'm curious to know what, you know, challenges and harassment or attacks that you face on a day-to-day.
I think when we're looking at the girl child coming into the newsroom, if you talk to them, most of them, their first entry point is when they are coming in for attachment. And you talk to a lot of the girls, the issue of sexual harassment, any male colleague that is looking at you, they're actually seeing a female object that they can do anything with. And even when they are saying you're on attachment, you're supposed to go with somebody else. Usually you're not assigned to a female colleague, a senior reporter within the newsroom. It's the guys who are actually jostling to say, I want to go with this person. And usually for these girls, because they're still coming in, they're new into the newsroom, it's quite a challenge. You talk to them, some of them will even talk about instances where they even wanted to quit, because they're like, this is how the ES, it's that bad. And then it also goes on to the issues that you would want to cover. Beatrice earlier on alluded to the fact that often it's soft news that you are given. Maybe your passion is into politics, maybe your passion is into economic issues, but when you get there, you are then told, okay, there is somebody who's giving a donation there, so go and cover that. So that's also a challenge for you to even needing to prove yourself, work beyond what is expected or beyond what a male colleague is actually doing. So as female journalists, we have to put in twice
as much work.
Yes, as much work.
Where do they get that from, this thought that we cannot handle hard news or politics or business? I know from a personal side, when I started at the radio station, I was told to start with youth topics, and and then I was given a health program, and then eventually the political platform that I got. But it was again
But you did it so well when you were running it.
But where do they get that from then? That initially I couldn't.
Yeah, it's the stereotypes that are there, Ruvenoko, where when they're looking at us as women, we're the mothers, you know, so yes.
Women in media, to be very honestly, as a young woman in media, I'll be very honest. Yes. I don't know of a platform that I can go to and get mentorship. Anatari, we should be coming and knocking on your door and saying, Tari, you've been in the game over 15 years. What's your perspective? Exactly. Why do we not have that for each other? Do you mentor anyone, Beatrice?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to say, I think actually when you look at all things female, there's always a historical imbalance to it. We catch up late, but I'm glad to say women are catching up, and they're catching up fast. Whether you're looking at the corporate sector, whether you're looking at, us as media practitioners, development sector, I think we're fast realizing that it's important for ourselves to be mentoring each other, not to be, because there's this portrayal that women cannot get along. They're always, tearing at each other and things like that. But in my life, in my career, I've had women who have uplifted me. So the challenge I've given to myself is to also uplift younger women who are in need of my mentorship, in need of my support. I think it's platforms like this where we discuss and we realize that, you know what, we've probably faced the same challenges. She has also gone through the same situations that I've gone through. I really wanted to talk about the sexual harassment because there are young women who are really wanting to get into media and young women who have just gotten into media. and the newsrooms are rife with sexual harassment. Terry, we spoke about sexual harassment from within, but there's also sexual harassment from without. Because when you get in and you're a journalist, you're speaking to everybody. You're speaking to your policymakers. All of a sudden, you're speaking to legislators, you're speaking to ministers, you're speaking to businessmen, big people that others just dream about. What happens? Even to your head, are you prepared? You know, for that, exactly. Right. And then you have some of these officials who think it's their right, because they're going to be meeting all sorts of people. It's their right to have their way with anybody and everybody. So you've got editors sometimes who also, you know, abuse that position that they have. You come on attachment, but you think in your head, I have to come back after I finish my degree. So I have to have good relations with these people. You don't know that the only way you need to, you know, the only path you need to be walking is to cultivate such a trust, or you show that you are so good that these people will actually call you back after you complete your degree program. And then they're actually exchanging you, passing you from one to the other. And the young girl, you know what happens in the newsroom? They do it so fast. They do it so fast. By the time the older females are coming in, they're telling you, you know what, you need to watch out for this. The girls are already, you know, they've been there, they've done that. Yeah. So I think as females, we really need to speak about the realities to the girls that are coming in, that even their sources, when they're cultivating sources, your politicians, your business people, they are not your friends. If over time you have sources that you have relations with, good for you.
Another thing that came up on my timeline earlier today when I was asking people about this topic was the issue of how female journalists look. Because I asked a question, I said, would you receive news differently if you were listening from a woman or from a man? And there's some very interesting comments that came up, and one of them was, you know, it depends how the woman looks, because a woman can be a distraction. So just from what you said, Beatrice, and I'll come to you on this one, Tari, should we not look attractive as journalists? Because does that then also make us bait both to our sources and to our male colleagues? Should we look the stereotypical journalist type with a backpack, you know, jeans, cargo pants, or whatever the case might be? I don't know. You know, what are we supposed to do? We'll get the answers right after the break. Stay tuned. This is My Future. Welcome back to My Future. I'm Ruveneko, and in our last segment with Beatrice Tonodzai and Tariro Makanga, we're going to hopefully come to some kind of conclusion about the role of women in media, which is almost impossible with these two, because there's so much to say and so much to share. And we're going to just touch on a few areas before we conclude. So one of the first females in media, you know, recognizable as far back as 1848 in London. And we're looking now at the hierarchy when it comes to our media houses. I'm proud to know that I am from a media house where most of our management, our top management, is female, you know, but this is not the case in most places. And the voice of our women, now back to the role of women in media. How we portray ourselves, how we portray each other.
We need to get to a point where we change the narrative. And this platform which we have created is a very good opportunity, because we are speaking amongst ourselves as media practitioners, but I'm also proud to say we are speaking as women who have really risen in terms of leadership within media organizations. So let me go back to my organization and instill that culture and begin to have those conversations, because sometimes the female journalists themselves, being part of society, they were socialized the same ways that the boys and the males have been socialized. We actually find ourselves tichito batira ku ataka the next female. Right. So we are changing the narrative by beginning to have these conversations.
I like that. I want to ask you in brief, you know, Tari, when you chose to go into HIV and AIDS and women and children, was that because you were stereotyped indirectly toward these softer stories that we've been talking about, you know, throughout the episode?
For me, actually, it wasn't because I was stereotyped.
Okay.
But when I started saying I want to come up with my first show, it was looking at young people. And my first encounter was at Mashambanzo. And those days, that's when we had AIDS.
Right.
And when I went there, it was just a shock for me. And from there, that's where the passion came from. So it's something that came through experience. What I really wanted to do and what eventually happened, completely different. So for me, I wouldn't say it was because of the stereotype. I just fell into the issue. And I think I actually pride myself to say I went into HIV, a subject that many actually try and avoid. And I've made a name for myself in that. And I think that's what I would like to say to every female person, be it in journalism, in whatever field. Let's do everything that we are doing well so that we make names for ourselves. If, say, we want to quote an economist, let our names be the ones that come to mind, even for male journalists. Because usually when you want to say an economist, it's usually male guys who, you come up with those names. So let's demand our space. No one is going to give it to us on a silver platter. We have to demand it. We have to take it.
To own it.
Yes.
I asked earlier a question on social media. I said, does it make a difference to you if you hear news or an interview from a female journalist or a male journalist? If so, what difference and why? And one of the responses that came was from Respect Ndanga. He says, I think politicians interviewed by women are more likely to hallucinate and tell the truth. Okay. So this comes back to sexualization, objectifying women, how we look as women. So this is, I don't know what he was getting at here, but that was one of his comments. And then someone else says, it doesn't change. Okay, so this was now a question around women in reporting and sport, because that's another area where we lack grossly. So I asked about that as well. And then Gisla says, no, it doesn't change the game, but it kind of is fun as it moves away from the usual. So a lot of people are almost indifferent. They're saying as long as somebody's professional, then it's a breath of fresh air. There's nothing wrong with that. But while we're on this, on social media and the cyber space in general, cyber violence has become a real thing. And I've been a victim of cyber violence in a big way, And one of the things that I have noted is that there's a tone that's given when you seem to be too strong a woman, where you seem to be challenging the status quo or speaking to a man, worse, a grown man, in a certain tone. What do we do then as journalists that are female and that are African and that are Shona, where there is that judgment as well?
A term came to my mind as you were posing that question. The term is ungovernable. I have been told how ungovernable I am, so very right. But I think, again, for me, it's not even about us being journalists. But of course, today it's our space. We're not apologizing for it. If you're going to come out with a strong opinion and you happen to be a woman, the quickest way some people know to shut you down is to tell you you're ungovernable. And you can tie that to our patriarchal, society where madzimai fana kugara wakasingaonekwi ozobuda panze oudzwa kunzi ndozvatati isusu ndozviri kuitika panapa. But thanks to all the policies that even government has also put in place, today we are saying no, there's more to me than what you are going to see. Really, you need to listen to me, you need to allow me to open my mouth. It's like the cyberspace allows a lot of people anonymity. They think they can come, they can swear us, they can say whatever they say to us. But you know what, as Tariro said, we are not stopping. We are not stopping.
Let's develop the thick skin, that thick skin. Not listen to them, not be intimidated. When you first yours, I was actually quite happy and proud. You actually stood your ground, and look at you here, still shining.
Just do the right thing. Corporate governance says as long as you are doing the right thing, right is going to protect you. So we don't care who says what, as long as we're doing the right thing and we're being professional and we're being decent and we're standing for what the role of the media is, which is to educate, inform, and entertain. Everything else,
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm inspired from this interview. Thank you so very much to both of you for joining us tonight. Beatrice Tonodzai, Tariro Makanga. As we discuss the role of women in media, I will definitely have to agree with the both of them and say that it is our space to dominate. And we should not be worried. I know there are a lot of young women that come and ask me questions. I want to enter media. I want to do this. But like we all admitted, we were all discouraged from entering journalism and media because of those stereotypes. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You define what woman you are going to be. I'm going to read one last tweet here that came in, which I think summed up our conversation, but also leaves food for thought. Okay, this is from King Kevels. He says, I feel like it's not too much of a concern when it comes to politics. This is regarding the question around, who should report, women or men. But it would be more impactful if a female reporter, commentator, talked about maybe a feature story on girl child abuse or things affecting women socially or female sports news. But at the end of the day, it's all up to the target market. Other countries don't even care who reports that, but most African countries will say, let's let male reporters do this because they haven't accepted that women are now influential when it comes to that too. So food for thought, and as we said, as women, it's our space to own. So make sure you just stay professional and don't get sidetracked by anything else. I'm Ruveneko, in the struggle and not stopping. Thank you very much for joining us on My Future tonight. That's it from me. Good night, be good, and if you can't be good, be safe.